In all ages, the wisest have always agreed in their judgment of life. It is no good. At all times and places the same words have been on their lips, words full of doubt, full of melancholy, full of weariness of life, full of hostility to life. Even Socrates' dying words were, "To live means to be ill a long while. I owe a cock to the god Aesculapius." Even Socrates had had enough of it. What does that prove? What does it point to?
Today's a good day to die.
To judge from his origin, Socrates belonged to the lowest of the low. Socrates was mob. You know, and you can still see it for yourself, how ugly he was. Ugliness is not infrequently the expression of a thwarted development, or of development arrested by crossing. In other cases it appears as a decadent development. The anthropologists among the criminal specialists declare that the typical criminal is ugly. Monstrum in fronte, monstrum in animo.
I thought that I possessed a countenance, hands, arms, and all the fabric of members that appears in a corpse, and which I called by the name of body. By body I understand all that can be terminated by a certain figure, that can be comprised in a certain place, and so fill a certain space as therefrom to exclude every other body, that can be perceived either by touch, sight, hearing, taste, or smell, that can be moved in different ways, not indeed of itself, but by something foreign to it, by which it is touched, and from which it receives the impression. For the power of self-motion, as likewise that of perceiving and thinking, I held as by no means pertaining to the nature of body. The first mentioned were the powers of nutrition and walking. But if it be true that I have no body, it is true likewise that I am capable neither of walking nor of being nourished.
Nihilism is a fairly new word and concept in 19th century philosophy. It came from Russia, where it essentially referred to the rebellion of the younger generation against their elders. But nihilism in Nietzsche is a very important concept. He sees it as he puts it, a specter that's haunting Europe, a phrase which we hear elsewhere as well. He defines nihilism in his notes as the highest values devaluing themselves.
Dionysus tells us that there is a tragic flaw in our nature. This is inevitable. We experience it every day. I don't need to validate it. I just need to recognize it and to accept it and try to live with it. Right? One strand of Plato that comes very strongly into our culture, which is this sense of the transcendent as being something that in some way overcomes the sensible, the bodily. This notion of the soul where the emotions are dark and irrational, bad, we need to somehow control them, dominate them, and keep them under our grasp. And reason connects us to the transcendent, which is in another world. Tradition, in the Western tradition, that denies the bodily, that denies the limitation of human beings, the fragility of our existence, that wants to get beyond that into some transcendent. Even if we deny God now, still we now want to create our own transcendence. And this is hubris. This is hubris of the purest sort, and a forgetfulness, an absolute forgetfulness of the emotions, of the bodily, that has a wisdom of its own. Pascal said, no, the heart has its reasons that reason cannot comprehend. And I think that philosophers, especially in our Western analytical tradition, seem to have been intent on repressing that fact, on denying it.
So there's this collective violence over and against Pentheus. Well, Nietzsche sees this as the way that the world works. This is the will to survive. Dionysus has the will to survive, not just the will to survive, but the will to power. And they end up seeing Pentheus as a wild animal. And they circle around Pentheus, and they end up killing him and eating him. Kind of a social Darwin idea, where the world has this will to survive. All of the species in the world have a will to survive, which often puts animals and humans over and against others for this survival. Kind of a survival of the fittest idea, right? Well, Nietzsche sees this and says there's truth in that. But Nietzsche takes it a step further and says it's not just this will to survive, it's this will to power. All humans are consumed with this will to power, which puts us over and against others. The way that we get power is by taking it from others. So there's kind of this lack of a concern for the victims of culture.
Have you ever heard of the madman who on a bright morning lighted a lantern and ran into the marketplace calling out unceasingly, "I seek God! I seek God!" As there were many people standing about who did not believe in God, he caused a great deal of amusement. "Why? Is he lost?" said one. "Has he strayed away like a child?" said another. "Or does he keep himself hidden? Is he afraid of us? Has he taken a sea voyage? Has he emigrated?" The people cried out laughingly, all in a hubbub. The insane man jumped into their midst and transfixed them with his glances. "Where has God gone?" he called out. "I mean to tell you, we have killed him, you and I. We are all his murderers. But how have we done it? How were we able to drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the whole horizon? What did we do when we loosened this earth from its sun? Whither does it now move? Whither do we move? Away from all suns? Do we not dash on unceasingly? Backwards, sideways, forwards, in all directions? Is there still an above and below? Do we not stray as through an infinite nothingness? Does not empty space breathe upon us? Has it not become colder? Does not night come on continually, darker and darker? Shall we not have to light lanterns in the morning? Do we not hear the noise of the grave diggers who are burying God? Do we not smell the divine putrefaction? For even gods putrefy. God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. How shall we console ourselves? The most murderous of all murderers, the holiest and the mightiest that the world has hitherto possessed, has bled to death under our knife. Who will wipe the blood from us? With what water shall we cleanse ourselves? What lustrums, what sacred games shall we have to devise? Is not the magnitude of this deed too great for us? Shall we not ourselves have to become gods merely to seem worthy of it?
Why? And here's the thing. Being male doesn't necessarily make you a man.
What are these churches now, if they are not the tombs and monuments of God?
speaking the blessing over your wife. That makes you a real man.
I exist. This is certain. But how often? As often as I think. For perhaps it would even happen, if I should wholly cease to think, that I should at the same time altogether cease to be. I am, therefore, precisely speaking, only a thinking thing. That is, a mind.
While on his way through Athens, a certain foreigner who was no fool at judging by looks told Socrates to his face that he was a monster, that his body harbored all the worst vices and passions. And Socrates replied simply, "You know me, sir." Not only are the acknowledged wildness and anarchy of Socrates' instincts indicative of decadence, but also that preponderance of the logical faculties and that malignity of the misshapen, which was his special characteristic. Neither should we forget those oral delusions, which were religiously interpreted as the demon of Socrates. Everything in him is exaggerated, buffo, caricature. His nature is also full of concealment, of ulterior motives, and of underground currents. I try to understand the idiosyncrasy from which the Socratic equation, reason equals virtue equals happiness, could have arisen. The weirdest equation ever seen. With dialectics, the mob comes to the top. Before Socrates' time, dialectical manners were avoided in good society. They were regarded as bad manners. They were compromising. Young men were cautioned against them. All such proffering of one's reasons was looked upon with suspicion. Honest things, like honest men, do not carry their reasons on their sleeve in such a fashion. It is not good form to make a show of everything. That which needs to be proved cannot be worth much. Wherever authority still belongs to good usage, wherever men do not prove but command, the dialectician is regarded as a sort of clown. Socrates was a clown who succeeded in making men take him seriously. What, then, was the matter?
Alcohol, violence, and arrests.
One night on High Street, yep. Yeah, beautiful.
It can be only the last defense of those who have no other weapons. One must require to extort one's right. Otherwise, one makes no use of it. Is the Socratic irony an expression of revolt? Of mob resentment? Does Socrates, as a creature suffering under oppression, enjoy his innate ferocity in the knife thrusts of the syllogism? Does he wreak his revenge on the noblemen he fascinates? As a dialectician, a man has a merciless instrument to wield. He can play the tyrant with it. He compromises when he conquers with it. The dialectician leaves it to his opponent to prove that he is no idiot. He infuriates. He likewise paralyzes. The dialectician cripples the intellect of his opponent. Can it be that dialectics was only a form of revenge in Socrates?